Hello and welcome to episode 52 of the Your Way podcast. I am joined this week by the fabulous Tracy Liberatore. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Nearly.
Yes.
And we obviously we don't know what we're going to talk about yet because we haven't started, but I think we've got a fabulous episode for you today. So I know Tracy through the guise of several hats. So Tracy and I were in a mastermind together earlier on in the year. And then I had the absolute privilege and pleasure of being led through a past life regression with Tracy in June of 2025 for anyone watching this far, far, far away in the future. Um, and I really wanted to get Tracy on for many reasons. One, because she's just a fantastic human and the stuff that she does is incredible, but also because I really want this platform to be a space where we can talk about things that people are really curious about. They're starting to explore a little bit more, but it also potentially feels like entering into the world of the unknown a little bit. So we're going to demystify to the extent that we can today. We're going to share a bit. But as ever, like this is the Your Way podcast. So we're not here to be like, this is what you need to think and this is what you need to do. It's just a conversation between two humans and you can take from it what you will. So Tracy, welcome.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have you here. Is there anything that you would like to add about yourself at this point, at this exact moment of time, that
No,
you would
I don't
like
think so.
people to know about?
I don't think
Okay,
so. I think
cool.
it'll come as we speak.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Um, so where to begin? So past lives, right? So if I start, I guess, from my perspective a little bit, and then we can go from there. I did a retreat back in, I think it was 2023, and we were given this exercise to go into the woods and we had to ask two questions. One question was, what can I know of myself here that I can't know anywhere else? And then what does this land know of me that I cannot know of myself? And the answer that came back, and we had a whole morning of silent meditation. And the answer that came back to the what does this land know of me that I cannot know of myself was, you've been here before. You've been here
Interesting.
before. And it wasn't necessarily like you've been here to this space before, but it was like you've been here before. And so afterwards, when we were allowed to talk again, I shared this. And the lady that ran the retreat, I'd been working with in various guises since 2019. And she was like, that's new for you. She was like, you haven't really been on the I've been here before bus previously. Um, so yeah, so there was that, and then there were various things like so I had Reiki sessions or other things happened that sort of started this, I don't know what the word is, experience of, oh, like maybe reincarnation is a thing. Maybe I have been here before, but you can even hear it in my voice when I'm sharing it, like very deeply skeptical, kind of Catholic background. There may have been heaven, although I also didn't really subscribe to the whole God thing. But the idea of we go and we come back, and we go and we come back, and we go and come back was completely new to me. And I sort of wanted to start there so that people who are in a similar place are like, yeah. But then what I found was the more healing work I did, the more this stuff started to come through, which also really pissed me off because I was like, are you serious? Like, I've now worked through all of my fucking childhood stuff, and that was a lot. And now you're like, oh, great, you've done this now. So now you can start looking at your other lives. I'm like, God, really? So yeah, so I guess that's sort of my little introduction. And I don't know if you want to say anything about that or like and or share a bit of like how it came
Yeah,
into your awareness.
it's interesting. I had a similar upbringing. So I went to Catholic school until fifth grade. And then we were switched to public school, but my mother was always a very strong Baptist. So it was everything is. I mean, and she's still to this day, 5 days a week, she's at church. So I originally started similar to you, trying to look at, I mean, reading different things. So I came through an addiction issue. I came through an alcohol addiction, and that's a story for in and of itself for another day. But once coming through that, I started to try to figure out where was this coming from? Why was I an alcoholic, or why was I drinking so much? Because I didn't accept the whole I am an alcoholic thing that they teach you in rehab. And so I wanted to try to figure out what was inside of me that was causing me to do this. And I started reading New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, and I had a woman that took me through this journey and like different things. And that was really my first introduction to a hypnotic state. And I remember being terrified going through that. And because I just didn't understand it, I didn't know what it was. And then, so from there, I started asking my cousin, who was a priest high up in the Catholic Church, about what does the Bible say about reincarnation? Because I've got my mother in my ear telling me that like this stuff is from demons and it's the devil and you're whatever, which I didn't buy into really either. But there was something inside me searching for some reason, you know, because I'm like, there's nothing in my current life that I feel like is causing this. Like there's something more, it's bigger. So I started thinking about past life, and so I started asking the questions. And so he said there's really nothing in the Bible that denies the existence of past life. And he pointed out a couple things. I don't remember what they all were now, but so from there, I started to think, okay, I want to do this. I want to have a past life. I want to see. And I reached out to a lot of different people and no one would see me because I had an alcohol addiction. No one wouldn't touch me.
Mm.
Um, and so then I finally, through a series of people, I don't remember everybody that I talked to, was given the name of Paul Arand. And so he is the person that did my past life in New York. I went to New York for a weekend. I did a past life and a life between life the next day. And it was life altering for me. So I don't know if you want me to go more into that now, or if you want to talk about your experience first.
No, I think you can go more into it, but I think just as a point of kind of clarification for people, because I know what you mean, but not everybody will. So when you said you did a past life one day followed by I don't even remember the phrase you used the day after,
Life between
can
life.
you a life between life the next day? Now I know this because we've done something similar. But if you were going to explain it to a 5-year-old, what does that what is that?
Okay, so past life is the method of training. Because so to finish the picture, Paul around did my past life and life between life, and then I decided at that point I wanted to do this for other people because it was so life altering for me. So I went signed up for his training. So his training was I think it's called Alliance. At any rate, if somebody wanted the information on this, I could get them. You can look him up and find him. He still does the training, I believe. And then the life between life is the phrase that's coined by the Michael Newton Institute for he's done all the research on this life between life stuff, which I have not gone through his training, which is another story too for another day. But um, so to answer your original question, the theory behind it was, and you could read this in Michael Newton's books, that in order to get into a deep enough hypnotic state to get into the spiritual realm, you need to be really familiar with and have experiences in hypnosis. And so doing the past life on day one, and if you could get into the past life on day one, because not everybody can do that either, you go through childhood into the womb, into the past life, and then the next day you are more susceptible and open to hypnosis. And so going again through that same path the following day, then from the past life, you can move on into the spirit realm for the life between life experience.
Yeah, and so the processes are so via the not necessarily exclusively, but via the method of deep hypnosis, the past life thing is to help people do what I would call a past life regression. So to go and find answers, find information about past life slash past lives. And
Right.
then I should have written this down, life between life.
Yes. And again, you have to go through Michael Newton's training to use that phrase if you're going to market yourself or say, I do this stuff. I do spiritual regression. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go through the training, so I can't say that is what I do. But I have had people that spontaneously go into spirit, and I've taken many people through, and we've had lots of
Yeah.
amazing experiences. So, not
Okay.
using that phrase is probably better off. It's
Okay, perfect.
copyrighted by them or
But so
something.
then so then the bit that is more, it's less about past life, but it's so when we did it together, so I can talk about my experience, which isn't copyrighted, or and if it is, I own it.
That's right. That's right. We're not
So
infringing
then
on anything.
so then when we did it, we went into a couple of different past lives, and then we sort of also went and explored and met like my soul family,
Yes.
and sort of went to the meeting of, that exploration of, am I going to come back, what am I here to
The
do,
planning room.
how do they all feel? Yeah.
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 The soul family,
um
the planning room, and all of that. Yes.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And
So
I think from
very,
that
very powerful.
vantage, yes, I think from that vantage point is where you could see, and it's not so much of like, oh, well, what did I do in that life, but it's really more about like the life lessons and what do I need to heal, and that's where I think the magic happens. Understanding why you're here, seeing the theme that you've been here so many times, learning, and you know, building up to this point that we're at now, right? Why we're here now.
Yeah, and so when people talk about, because you see it sort of banded about, well, I mean, in the kind of circles we operate in, if you don't operate in the kind of circles, you probably don't see it quite as often as we do. But all of the stuff around, like, you trained lifetimes for this, and we're like, yeah, we have trained lifetimes for this. But other people might see it and be like, what are they going on about? But when you do this work and when you tap into it, it's like it's almost like it brings it to life, because it's like, I really actually have trained lifetimes for this. Thank you very
Hmm.
much.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So if we go back to your weekend, so you go to New York for a weekend, you
Hmm.
have these experiences. Do you want to share anything about those?
Sure. I mean, I my first experience, like I said, this was now I've done many different things with many different people, where they read your past life for you. We go into a meditative state together, and then they come back and they tell you what they saw. I have trust issues, right? So for me, there was a part of me that just never really could own any of that or believe it because it was like, well, I don't know. I mean, isn't it sort of like the Bible? Like they're telling you this story, but like I need to call me a doubting Thomas, right? I need to see it. I feel like I need to see it. So that's what I was chasing. That's what I was looking for. And so that's what this experience was. I remember that the very first thing I saw was like these waves. And so once you follow the thread, because at first you're just kind of confused, if you just allow yourself to just experience what's happening, stuff starts to flow. And I don't know how else to describe that, but so I remember the first thing I had was this crushing sensation in my chest. And it was just like, oh my goodness. And so it was like, come to fast forward, I'm this woman who is crawling up on the shore, soaking wet in this blue dress with this gray hair back in a bun and white apron. Um, and I had just lost my husband and my child at sea in an accident, and I survived. And so I never um, got over that in this whole entire lifetime that we went through. I died miserable and sad, and so the story or the lesson was letting go. You need to let go, and so this has been a theme for me: letting go of stuff, and it comes up so often, all the time, with different scenarios. I could see it in my life, and after going through that, I could look back and see different things, and I was able to see at that point in my life what I needed to do. I was trying to go through a divorce at that time, and I was holding on to so much. I mean, the house I was in, my parents gave me the land, and I was, what's going to happen in my life? Who am I? I mean, I was a PA. I needed to give that up. I mean, there was just so much I had to let go of to step into this new identity. And that is sort of where my business came up. It was born out of that because the Phoenix to me was just, the symbol of rebirth. And that's what I went through. I went through hell and back and had to come through on the other side. And so that's where Rising in Phoenix came from.
amazing. And then so for you, actually having that experience and going back into the pain of, because it's very, very interesting, isn't it? When you do a past life regression, when you go into the past life, you actually, it's not necessarily like you're reliving it, but you do feel the intensity of the emotion. You
You
do
are
feel the
there.
intensity of the emotion.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And that's the healing piece, though.
yeah, yeah,
Releasing those, because see, we're holding on to that. We're holding that in our body and in our human form. And I mean, we've carried some of this stuff through. I mean, God knows, I don't know what year it was, but I mean, clearly it was somewhere in ancient history. I mean, I've had past lives where I'm not even on this planet, right? So, we're carrying all the weight of all this. And so the releasing of that back to the universe, giving it back is part of the healing process. And you're right. When you drop in, you're that person again. I mean, you see through their eyes, you experience through them, you're there, you know.
yeah.
I think that's the beauty
But
of it for me.
yeah, yeah, and it's so, so powerful. But then I'm curious for you, because it would be different for everyone. But how did then that experience and seeing that? So you're there, you're feeling the sensation, you felt the feeling of the waves, you're on the beach, you realise then that you've lost your husband, you've lost your child. Um, you presumably were guided through the beautiful, this a similar beautiful process that you guided me through around, like, not in a trite way, but like the so what. So like, well, what is it from there? What is it that you're here now to do with? What difference did that make for you now around this theme of I'm here to deepen that lesson of learning to let go?
It's just something that I know on a regular basis that I could recognize in my life when I'm trying to control something. Like, because I think that's a big thing for me too. I'm like, I always want to be in control of stuff. And letting go of that control, letting go of like it just comes up so often in my life. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just changed the way I view the world. Um, and really it was more of the spiritual regression too. I think that because when I went into spirit the next day, I learned that my ex and I, well, my ex was the husband and my current daughter now was the child at that time. And so he and I were supposed to learn to, let go in this life, only without the death through divorce. That's what I was going through at that time of my life. It helped me understand and helped me get through that divorce. We were supposed to learn the different phases of love from, relationship and marriage to friendship. And I've had other experiences where I have other realizations through my daughter and stuff. So, but it just gives you a different perspective on life. And for me, I felt like I was viewing the world from here. I don't know how else to describe it. Like I was observing the chaos that goes on a regular basis. And when I was removed from it, I was able to see it, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to describe it. The perspective
Yeah,
changes, like you're not in it anymore.
yeah, it was a real, so it's not that long ago since we did it together. Um, and as per your guidance, because I'm a good girl. No, I'm not. I'm a little rebel, but generally I'm a good girl. I have not watched the recorded back yet because you were like, give it a month, and I was like, I will give it a month because I like to earn my little gold stars. Like, right? But um, the things that I suppose maybe what I'd like to do is just share a little bit about how I experienced it,
Hmm.
because I think it's really, really important. And it was also a little bit different than I expected, right?
Yes.
So I didn't really give it a lot of thought. Like I knew it was something that I'd been drawn to. So I've had that experience in the woods. I've also had sort of strange experiences like on retreats where like it's at the end of the retreat and it's like, what's your name? And like all of a sudden I'm like, my name isn't Louise. And then that freaks me out. And I'm like, what? And they're like, what is your name? And I'm like, oh, well, apparently my name is Persephone, but that doesn't mean anything to me. And then now I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. Um, but I'd also had experiences where So one actually was one that was given to me actually by a very dear friend who did a Reiki session with me, and she was very, very upset at the end of it. She was like, I've just seen all of this stuff. It's very clear that I need to pass it back to you. But I basically don't want to, but it's very, very clear that I need to tell you about this. And I've not told you about this before, Tracy, but this isn't going to surprise you at all. But the long and short of it was
Mhm.
my sister was in trouble, and my family forced me to go and try and rescue her because they were like, you're the one that needs to do it. You need to go and save her. And then by the time I found her, she was dead. So I then carry her back. This is like way, way, way back. Like we're living in the woods. It's like barely even houses. But then when I take her back to the village, I'm blamed for her death. And then I take my own life. So that was the first time I had like, but like you said, it wasn't something that came through me. It was something that somebody else saw. But at the same time, it was so like, obviously like a different flavor. But I was like, this is literally just a different version of my current life. And I could even see at that point that part of what I was meant to do was to stop sacrificing myself all over the place and stop trying to rescue. And like you said with the letting go, I just have these constant opportunities. I've got a client who's like, does everything have to be such a fucking growth opportunity? But it's all these growth opportunities around letting go, not rescuing, not being the mother, not taking on too much, not overgiving. Um, and ultimately not sacrificing myself for the work that I'm here to do, which is why I think so much of my stuff now is like your way, doing it your way, or Wealthy Witches is all about like how do you put yourself first. So like your mission's important, but you are more important. So anyway, back to our experience. In my mind, in my naive, sweet little mind, we were going to do a hypnosis. I was going to feel very relaxed. And we were basically just going to do like a little tour, like a little world tour of history. And it was going to be like, this is what happened. This is what you did then. This is what you did then. This is what you did then. And it was more just going to be like informative. Like it might have come through me, but it was just going to be very, very surface, very just like, this was the,
Like watching a movie.
like watching a movie, but like a very surface level movie, right? And so, and then we start, and I think it's really important to say this because obviously, well, I don't tend to focus on the whole trauma nervous system stuff now, but I've done the training, I can do the work, right? And so I'm always very, very conscious about the importance of like a properly safe space, a safe nervous system space, a space that isn't re-traumatizing, right? Because I think there's a lot of people out there, maybe with good intentions, maybe not, who knows, but they offer this stuff and it's a bit like you go into it and it's like, okay, like I'm okay because my system's regulated and all of the rest of it, but really that wasn't cool. Whereas, and I think this is important to say now, even though I'm sort of going off on a tangent, from the second we started to the second we finished, and there were many seconds in between because we went for 3 hours.
Yeah.
I felt so held and so safe. And I think that's so important because it's actually quite a big deal to be like, well, I'd like to go and explore my past lives and see what comes up. There is a vulnerability to it. There is a vulnerability to it. And actually to feel so safe and so held. Um, but it was very, very interesting for me how quickly I got into this space of this deep emotional upset in my system. We hadn't even like we were still just like you were all like we'll visit a couple of childhood areas as you help to get a bit more relaxed, even in the childhood stuff. Um, and it was so beautiful how you held me through those moments. But I think this is the bit that one of the many things I'm trying to get across is it wasn't just okay, this past life, this past life, this past life. It was like, okay, so here's what's come up for you. And then you helped me explore the past life and what had happened. But the bit that I really wasn't expecting, that was just amazing for me, was then this real proper exploration of like, okay, well, how is this relevant for you now? How is it relevant for you now? What is it that you needed to learn? What were the gifts you had back then? Do you want to bring those with you now? Do you want to let them go? What was the thing that you needed to learn, and how do you use that now? Because it made something that in my mind was going to be something quite, I don't know, ethereal, very practical and very tangible for me right now in the present moment. And no surprises, one of my deep, great lessons was stop sacrificing yourself, love. Stop sacrificing yourself in order to do your work. Like your work's important, but you've got to stop sacrificing yourself in order to do it. Um, so I think that was incredible because I wasn't quite like I wasn't really expecting it to have such a profound impact on now. I just more expected it to be like, oh, useful information about the past that maybe made a little bit more sense about why I'm here and what my mission is. But it was so incredible. And then the thing that I've not told you this, Tracy, but the thing that I found the most powerful towards the end, we hit upon a past life that was very difficult for me to access and look at. Like it was very emotionally painful. And you were asking questions around sort of like, what's the lesson that I'm here to learn? And what is it that I needed to take away? And at that point, I think I don't know if it was just because I was tired, we were kind of 3 hours in, my system felt a little bit overwhelmed. And so I said, I was like, I kind of feel like I need to, like, I kind of feel like I need to finish, it's almost like it's just a little bit too much for me right now. I kind of feel like I need to stop. And you didn't even skip a beat. There wasn't even like, I mean, you might have taken like half a breath and you were like, okay. And then you literally counted me straight out of it. And that for me, like, and we haven't talked about that, but that for me was like the most incredible thing that anyone could have done for me, because it was in that instant that I was like, I think I'm done now. You were like, right, out you come. There wasn't any like, just see if you can go a little bit longer, just push yourself a little bit more. You were like,
Oh,
okay, she's done. Let's get her out of there. And
I've
that
been
has
there.
been,
Yeah.
yeah,
You're done. You got what you needed for that day. There's no reason to keep going. You can always come back.
yeah.
Yeah, come back later.
But I think that for me was so important because yeah, look, we've all been in spaces where you kind of get pushed a bit too far or like it's a bit too much.
Yes.
And that, so the whole combination of it allowed me to feel so safe and so held. And I think it's only about 3 weeks ago, isn't it, that we did it? So I'm still integrating a lot of it. I'm still sort of kind of processing and making sense of, and a lot of it I'm kind of keeping to myself. Some of it I actually think I will, other than like best friends that I've talked to about it. Some of it I think probably it's like I'm not going to be doing a podcast about it. Um,
Which I think is another
but
important
just
point
incredible.
that you're making. A lot of people want to bring a partner with them for their experience. They want somebody to sit in the room with them. They want them to driving in a car. I've had people show up for a session where they're a passenger in a car traveling to somewhere. Um, and it's just such a personal experience. It's just not something that's recommended. What would you say to people that have that question?
Go on your own
Yeah.
or do it from home. Now, obviously, like
Oh,
if
yeah,
you
you
hadn't
shouldn't be in
guessed
a
from the
car.
accents, if
I
you
didn't do
hadn't
that
guessed from the
session.
accents,
Somebody that calls from their car
Tracy's,
doesn't get their session.
yeah,
It's not
but
gonna
like
do it, but
Tracy's in the States and I'm in the UK. So obviously, um, we did our session via Zoom. But to be honest, I quite like that kind of thing via Zoom because there's also that thing like at the end. I mean, we did it. I did it. You were not in bed. I wasn't in bed. But at the end, I just got to close my laptop down.
Mhm.
Nat was downstairs. Actually, Nat had taken Sydney out because he thought we might finish a bit later. He'd taken her out for a little walk, but I just was able to text him. I was like, I've done. I just need a little bit of time to myself. I'll come down when I'm ready. Whereas, like, even like, and also I'm a shit driver, but if I then had to go and get in a car or go somewhere else, like, you have got to go gently with yourself.
Well, and there's things that come up that even though you think your spouse or whoever is your soulmate and you love them and they know everything about you, it's just not something you want somebody there for. You're not going to be able to go through the things you need to go through if and when they come up. You know, it's just one of those things. A lot of people want somebody with them, and I just don't think it's certainly not recommended. And there's reasons why. You were saying certain things that are just so personal to me. I don't want anybody to know this. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if so, the thing that I am happy to talk about. So one of the I don't know if it was I don't know if it was clear that I wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm a witch in this lifetime, but one of the ones that we looked at, it was again, at this point the houses were made of wood and it's still in the forest. So whatever that kind of time period is, and my clothes are like muslin cloth. Do I mean muslin? No, not muslin cloth. More like those if you did the sack race at school. Do you have the sack for
Burlap.
sports day?
The burlap brown.
Sports day, yeah. I would call it like Hessian something. I don't know, but anyway, but like that kind of material outfit. So we're in that sort of time period. And I there were two things that I did in that lifetime. One of them was that I healed people with herbs. So it's very much like a herb, like I don't know, a herb doctor, traditional, like a anyway. And the other thing was that I got these very powerful oracle visions and messages through my dreams. Now that's very interesting because my relationship with the dream has gone off the charts in the last year, like in this lifetime. Um, and nutrition and like I'm not a trained herbalist, but for myself, all of that stuff is very, very interesting to me. But what had happened in that lifetime was I've been given guidance through the dream that someone in the village, like, you know, the archetypal, like the baron or whatever it would have been of the village, was poisoning the water. And it was making the people in the village sick. Now, what I didn't do was talk to people in the village or share the fact that I'd had this prophetic dream. I went to try and talk to the baron about it, and it didn't go well. And it's interesting, Tracy, how when you talk about like that feeling of the waves and you follow the sensations, my I can't remember if it was right at the start or not. You might know, and it probably doesn't matter. But the feeling was a very like a pain, like a constriction in my throat.
I remember that.
That's how we kind of got into the past life. Like, and in real life, there in the hypnotic state, like very, very intense feeling around my throat. Now it turned out that I got a double throat whammy.
You did.
Well, I have to do so much work on my throat chakra now. So I thought in my sweet, innocent naivety that if I went and spoke to this baron and said, I know you're poisoning the water, that he would stop. And he thought that he would strangle me because he didn't want anyone else to know. So that was like the first part of it. That was the first part of it. But I managed to get away because I had a dagger, because I was a little badass. But then ultimately, I was hung. Um, and I think I think some of the lessons from that life were number one, don't hide my gifts. So don't hide the fact that the healing with the herbs, don't hide the like the what's coming through in the dream. Don't like sort of try and sneak it around because you don't want people to think you're weird. Don't hide your gifts. Um, and then it also was a bit like when I think about it now as an adult who's watched these films, I'm like, well, I was kind of asking for it, wasn't I? If you go to the baddie and be like, I know you're doing bad things, they're not going to be like, oh, yeah, you're right. I repent.
I should stop.
It's interesting as I'm talking about this, my throat's going like, ah.
Yeah.
um, yeah, but then that's really, really powerful because it reinforced also some of the work that I've been doing this year around like it's safe to be seen. It's important that I share my gifts, but also it's important that I encourage and allow other people to share their gifts because we're here for a reason. And if we hide that reason, then that's no good. I mean, I'm not suggesting that people are going to get hung these days for hiding their gifts, but we live in slightly different times now.
For sure, thankfully. I think another interesting piece around that too, if you remember, I don't know, when you first saw that you were going to be hung, if you remember, you said, "Oh my God, all these people are here to watch me, and I'm about to get hung," and you were kind of experiencing that.
Yeah.
And we kind of took you away from that, and you came back through that, seeing it from spirit after you had kind of moved into that spirit space. And I don't know, do you remember what you told me at that point?
Yeah, I think I do. Well, I'll tell you what I remember. But just to go back slightly, and I remember that being so painful because I was like, I've been here trying to help these people,
Yes.
and now I'm going to be hung, and they're all stood around watching. Like they're all stood there
Hmm.
watching, and and my actual experience in the hypnotic state, lying on the bed, was just this deep, deep wave of grief of like, I've
Hmm.
tried to do my best here. I've tried to help these people, and now they've just come to watch me be killed. And again, like I can see the parallels in this lifetime, like you kind of like you overgive to people and then they're not necessarily grateful. And then but then the guidance from spirit, and I'm very happy for you to correct me if I'm not quite remembering this right, but it was like essentially they've been forced to be there. Like they actually had to go to watch the hangings because that was the expectation. Like the townspeople had to go and watch the hangings. Um and they were sad. Like it was almost like I could see it from a different perspective and I could see
Right.
the sadness on their faces. So it wasn't like they were there to like rejoice, Wizard of Oz, Ding Dong, the witch is dead style. It's like they were there, but I could see the grief in their faces that was different to that original thing of, well, they're just here for like the cheap entertainment.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Literally at the expense of my life.
That's
Yeah,
exactly right. And it's that different perspective that really shifts things within us
yeah,
from,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And even when, so I had a hard time when we did so Tracy does an exercise, or exercise really doesn't give it justice, but you go to some like broadly constructive childhood memories, and I'd had this broadly constructive childhood memory, and I was playing nicely with my dad on the beach, but then it turned sour quite quickly because I looked back and my mum is preoccupied with my sister, and I'm then experiencing all that pain of mum doesn't want anything to do with me. And again, you just took me through this beautiful, like incredibly, like forget past lives, incredibly healing for this lifetime experience. That's when I knew I was going to be okay. When you did that bit, I was like, she's good. I was like, she's good. This is going to be fine. But that experience of allowing that to see that different perspective from my mum, and then also to have that healing between that younger part of me and my mum. And then I think we brought that little version of me along, didn't we? She came along for the ride. um but you're right, just being able to get into that different state and see things differently, but not see things differently from a sometimes mindsets like, well, just change your thoughts and how could you see this a different way, or and all of the rest of it. And like not even tangibly, rationally, it's like, yeah, this makes sense. I can see how that might be the thing. But then you sort of, skip off down the street feeling exactly the same as you did before because nothing's actually changed. In that experience, it was just so much deeper and so much more profound because it's almost like I became my mum for a moment, but then I was also
Right.
still this little girl, and I could see how the little girl had maybe was like, well, mum isn't interested in me because she's just with my sister. Versus she had a little teeny tiny baby that obviously she had to carry, and she was holding her against her in one of those things because like that's actually quite a nice way to carry a baby so the baby feels safe. Like it wasn't about me. She was just had someone else to look after, and my dad was playing with me on the beach. But that's what I mean. But but I had obviously made it me, and also I had no memory now of that experience, but it was in me. Like I had an emotional memory of it without there necessarily being a cognitive memory that went with it. And you have to have the experience to be able to understand this, but I'm going to try and explain it anyway. It's like you are that person in the experience and the memory when it comes up. And even though there's a part of you that might be like, am I just making all of this stuff up? The feelings and the sensations and the emotions are so real. And that's the bit that sort of tells you I can't, even if even if the vision is a little bit different, because maybe like that's just how it needs to come through. The emotion is you can't argue with it.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what I say too. For me, like you said, when I had that first past life, mental mind, when you come out of it, is just, well, that couldn't possibly happen. And, the thousand things that it wants to tell you, but there's just no denying the experience in your body that you feel and the release of that and the healing and how much different you feel. So, I mean, let's just say, even if you did make it up, you still healed. So, what difference does that make too, right? I mean, you feel better, you're still healing. I personally believe that some of these spaces we go into, our human mind is not meant to, it's not made to go there. And so that's part of why the hypnosis is important. It helps the mental mind quiet so we could get into the
Yeah,
subconscious mind, which is able to travel to these spaces and have these memories and these
yeah,
experiences and these healings.
yeah. Amazing. That's a parcel been delivered. If you can hear the dog barking right now, but I can hear Nat's
I
gonna go
couldn't
and
hear
sort it out.
it.
Um, so I want to talk about some of the recent shifts that you have had as well from some of the work that you've done. But just for right now, feels like a really lovely juncture. If someone's listening to this conversation and they would like to explore what that might look like for themselves, so they're like they're curious. They're like, oh, I'd like to do some past life work. How can they reach you? How can they find you? Anything that you think they should know? Like,
Well, I have my Facebook page and group, Rise Again Phoenix. You can find me on Facebook. I believe I have a public profile now with just my name, Tracy
yeah,
Liberatore. Um, that's probably the easiest way. Send me a message on Messenger, WhatsApp.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll have links to everything in the show notes if people want to go and have a look on your page and other things. Now I haven't got lots of stuff to compare it to, but I have got lots of experience in spaces that feel very safe and held and spaces that don't feel very safe and held. And if you want to do this sort of work and feel very safe and held, I highly recommend reaching out to Tracy. Now, as I've said, I'm in the UK, Tracy's in the States. Do you presumably you work with anyone anywhere? Like, I don't mean just anyone, right? But do you know what I mean? Like you're not restricted on jurisdiction of the way you can do the work.
No, I do it over Zoom at this point. Yeah. One good thing that came out of COVID is they had to start teaching everybody how to operate from Zoom. Prior to that, it was all in person, and I don't know that other than doing retreats and stuff, we're really able to. So it's kind of really expanded, the people we could see. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
amazing. Um, would you like to talk about bringing the joy back?
Yeah. You're talking about our group that we just went through. Is that what you said?
Yeah, but I suppose even outside of the group that we just went through, some of the experiences that you have had or that transition that you have had about what it is that you are here to do and how you've received some of those messages. Because, when we first met, you were grappling with, like you talked earlier on, that you've had an alcohol addiction as part of your challenge this time around.
Yes.
And so and there were lots of kind of question marks around, was that something that you were supposed to be helping people with? Or like not specifically, but maybe like healers in that similar space. Um, and then that shifted.
Yes. So
So
originally, right before COVID hit is when I started Rise Again Phoenix. And I wrote a book which hasn't been published, but it was all
Yet.
focused on addiction. Because when I did my Life Between Life, part of that experience was I had to heal my genetic line. And I remember this funnel. I just saw this funnel with dots, and this was like the people that I needed to be helping. And so I was very driven then. I thought it was supposed to be, with the addiction piece. But that never 100% really felt aligned. And I could never really figure out what the heck I was supposed to do with that. And I remember just trying to meet people, trying to set up appointments, and there was all this pushing and proving, and it just burnt me out. And it just didn't feel like what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just so unfulfilling. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm stopping. Put that business on the shelf for about 4 or 5 years. I hadn't done anything. Um, Went through a divorce, had to sell my house, didn't really have a space that I could work in. I was living back in my parents' house. I was sleeping back in the bedroom I grew up in. So I always looked at it as like, expansion and contraction, right? So the universe expands and contraction. So this was my contraction phase and I wasn't supposed to do
Yeah.
anything, but finally got my new house built. I'm in the new space. So January of this year, joined the mastermind where you and I met. And through that process, had the hand mudras and the light language that started to come through. And as I look back, even when I was originally in the house I sold through the divorce, when I would do the smudging and stuff in my room, my daughter would have nightmares. And so I would use sage and Palo Santo. I would use this language during that process, and I never understood it. I didn't know what it meant, but I just did it as part of what I was doing. Um, and I would make these symbols with the smoke that I never understood. So going through this
Amazing.
session that you and I did, and I would sit there and do this thing with my hand when I was doing my Rise Again Phoenix work, never understood that either. But when I was going through this work that we did in this group, I started to allow some of this stuff to just come through, because as Vanessa explained it to us, it started to make sense to me what it was. And there was a part of me internally that was like resisting it for whatever. Oh, you're weird. This is just strange. Don't let anybody know about it. But through our group, I started to realize it wasn't weird. It was special. And I even had said to Vanessa, I think, in one of my one-on-ones before that light language activation one that we did, um, if I just had that, it would give me this gift. It would be something that I could use to really help people, right? That would get me where I needed to go.
I think you said that on a group call
It might have
as
been on the
well then.
group
Yeah,
call.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I remember when we went through that experience on that group call, at the end, she had said, I don't know if we were supposed to journal something, but I had put my laptop down to get up to get something. And I just had this experience where I just kind of put my arms down and I looked up at the ceiling and I was crying. And I'm like, fine, I'll just do it. I give in at this point, right? And I surrendered to it. And it's like all of this stuff just started to come through like at such a rapid pace. I mean, it's like the hand stuff, the light language, and the music, just music has started coming through this weird. I recorded this 3.5 minute song that I still haven't published. Um, and in one of my one-on-ones with
I think
her
we're not
again.
supposed to call it weird.
Well, I don't think it's weird now, but it's like I think about the me back then and the me now. I mean,
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
the physician assistant lawyer person over here would think this person over here is absolutely nuts, right? But
Mm.
like how far I have come from that surrendering of that personality as part of the death back then, right? So yeah, I just remember going through again. It was the night before, actually, the night before or the early morning hours before that group session. I had done a wounded healer meditation with Crystal Heinemann of the Psychic Soul. And I was laying in bed and doing all this stuff with my hands and crying, and all this stuff was coming through. And I don't know if that clearing allowed me to, I mean, but the message I kept hearing was, because even on the group call, it was like, no, no, don't do it, don't do it. But like the message was, if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. So I started letting the hand motions go on that group call. And that's when the light language finally kicked through, right there in that whole
Amazing.
experience. And then after that, when I met with Vanessa, we had done another kind of trip. And that's wherein I met this Lemurian priestess. And she had a large black anaconda serpent snake as her spirit animal. It was a sentient being. And I remember meeting in this room underneath a waterfall with all these other priestesses. And we all had our own things that we did. And so we would come there to compare stories and figure out what was the best method for this or that, or who do you, and the theme there was collaboration. You need to collaborate with other people that have gifts that you don't have. You can't do everything. Find your specialty, know what that is, figure out who you send people to that need something you can't do. And I remember coming out of that, the snake kind of wrapped around me and I held its hand. I felt still could feel the weight of her in my hand. And her name was Sahara. And I said to her, like, please don't leave me again. She said, Hasiana, I will never leave you. And that's where I got my soul name. That's how I know what it is. And so that's where this whole Hasiana personality has started to come through. She's the one with the music and the light language. And, in another, again, I work with a bunch of people. Paul's wife, Sophie, does this family constellation stuff. And that same week, I had a session with her set up on Thursday where I had gone again into hypnosis and met this other shamanic. He looks like a brown robes and the feathers, and he was the one that was carrying this light language all this time until I was ready for it. So he's my protector spirit.
Amazing.
And I don't know how much you want me to go into the other story, but I've gotten, the magic and the witch, that I met in that other experience. So there's just been a ton coming through this year. And the message is that I am here, Hasiana is here to bring joy back to humanity, because we lose that at a young age. I've actually watched it. I don't think we talked about this. I've watched my daughter as she grows up. She's now in 5th grade, going into 6th grade, middle schooler already. And last year, I really noticed it that the schools start to take the fun out of the stuff at school. Like my son is going into 3rd grade, and they do the 100th day of school, and they do Dr. Seuss week, and they do all these fun things at school. But the upstairs kids don't get that anymore. And it's like, why? He comes home with all these stuff, this artwork that he did for Mother's Day, and they do these wonderful, I love them. What do you think about this? What your mother does this? And they always have these amazing things. I remember when she was in preschool, they said, how old do you think your mother is? And I think she said 14 or something. I was like,
Brilliant.
but it's like, I treasure these things. Why would you take that away from me? Like, let the kids have, but so it's like you take the joy out of their life and now they have to learn to be an adult. And it's like, this leads to depression and anxiety and addiction is what I have come to learn. I was addicted to alcohol because I wanted to just feel that childhood joy one more time. I just want to feel that feeling. What does it feel like to not be judged and have no worries and cares and not have to, think about tomorrow or all the responsibilities as an adult that we have, the stressors, right? So you drink and you get into that, right, space, like, and that's kind of what we were as a child. That's the feeling I was chasing forever. And then the drinking, obviously isn't good for you. It turns against you and it becomes all these things. But so that's the root of it for me. And so bringing that back to us as an adult, remembering there's magic in life, right, was another message. Bringing that magic back, that's my mission. That's what I'm here to do. It's not the addiction piece. It's more than that. It's the root cause under the addiction that I'm after.
Yeah, amazing. So bringing the joy frequency back and remembering the magic. I
Yeah.
think what we'll need to do is, I think you'll need to come back on and we will share more stories, because otherwise we could be here for hours, very
Yes.
honestly.
Yes.
And I think also maybe once it's not kind of quite so new since I did mine, and maybe we do another one at some point, we can come and have another conversation about where we're at and what you are doing. So as we come to the end, so Tracy talked about it, we'll go in the show notes, but Tracy's business is Rise Again Phoenix, which I think is a beautiful depiction of that whole, rebirth process. So I have a mastermind that runs once a year called Your Way, and there's a lot of Phoenix. There's a lot of Phoenix in the Your Way page. And yeah, so you can find Tracy on Facebook. She's got an amazing Facebook group which is obviously also on Facebook. If anyone would like to get in touch with Tracy in a different way, like please get in touch with me, go and drop her a message. And I suppose I just want to end it with like staying curious. It's 2025 now. Even in 2022, I would have been completely like, past lives aren't a thing. They aren't a thing. Full stop. The end. I would have thought that this conversation was absolutely fucking bonkers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like off the charts bonkers. And if that's where you're at right now and you stayed to the end, I mean, fair play, I'd have given up long ago. but also just let that be okay. You know, like there might be a point in time where you want to come back to this and it resonates and it lands and there might not. Um, but I think the more you can sort of stay curious and allow things to open and evolve, and also the more you hear things like this. So if and when you do have those experiences, it's just a little bit less scary and unknown, then amazing. But if this is something that you do feel drawn towards doing, just come and have a chat with Tracy. I'm not saying you absolutely have to work with her, but you want to be held. You want to be held through this stuff because you don't know what you're going to find out when you go through to the. I was going to say to the other side. I don't know what the technical phrase would be, but we'll just call it the other side. When you go and access that stuff, you don't know what's going to come up. Like I was surprised. I was surprised at the intensity of feeling of it. And so then you want someone who can hold you through the intensity of the feeling of it. This has been so fun. I feel like we just sort of got on and we're like, blah, 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 blah. So if you would like to reach out to Tracy, then please do so. Tracy, is there anything that you would like to finish with? Anything that you would like to share with people? Whether it's I don't know, these are things to look out for, this is something that you should know.
So the only thing coming up for me as you were talking was I just wanted to share. I had originally, back when I started the company, wanted to use unicorns in my imaging. And I had somebody tell me, oh no, the work you're doing is professional. You don't want people to see you as that. And now fast forward, I've come to realize that just you need to listen to your own inner guidance, your own inner voice, because right now I am using unicorns in my imaging because the magic is what I'm realizing is really the root of what we need to remember. So I can't say I wish I didn't listen back then because things happen for a reason and here's where we are now, but just really listening to that inner voice is just so important. And if you feel called to this work, there's a reason for it.
Yeah, and I think that's so true as well. Like, how often do we second guess ourselves because we outsource what we know what we want to do, and then we let someone else tell us what we should be doing.
What we should be doing. That's exactly right. Yeah. Give your
Um,
power away.
yeah, yeah. So thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
on.
Thank you for having me.
We'll definitely do it again. And I will see people next time. So I've got another interview later on this week that may go on the podcast a couple of weeks from now. We will see, unless I get inspired to do a solo episode in the meantime. But take care, everyone. Come and speak to Tracy and myself. Let us know. Let us know what's come up. Come and ask your questions. We'd love to hear them. And I will see you soon. Thanks,
Thanks.
Tracy.
Yep. Bye bye.
Bye.